There were 3 forks on their table, but only 2 people. I don't know why that's what I noticed first. Not the way her hand was resting near his. Not the way his leg was touching hers beneath the table. Not the wine glass, already on its second pour. Just the fork, the third fork, lying there awkwardly and used, like an accidental guest at a private dinner. I stood behind the potted plant, the one with fake pebbles and a plaque that said, "Do not touch." I touched it anyway. Needed to feel something solid. She was right there. My wife, Celia, wearing that green sweater I got her for our anniversary. The one she claimed didn't quite fit right and never wore. Except now, for him. She was laughing. Not fake, not polite, but full-body laughing. Leaning in, mouth open. That hiccup laugh she used to get when we binge-watched bad cooking shows at 2 a.m. That sound I used to think was ours. And he was younger. Shaved head, expensive coat, big watch, big hands, big everything. The kind of guy who orders wine without looking at the menu. The kind who doesn't ask, just assumes. They didn't see me. Of course they didn't. I was the ghost in this story. I pulled out my phone, opened our texts. The last message she sent. Working late again. Don't wait up briefcase, ZZZ. And yet here she was. 6:42 p.m. sharp. At Alto Mare. A place we could never afford responsibly. A place we only went once, for our engagement dinner. She'd said it was too showy back then. Guess it grew on her. I didn't barge in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took a photo of the third fork. Just that. Sent it to her. A minute later, I watched her pick up her phone. She read the message. Her smile froze mid-laugh, like someone had pulled the power from her joy. Her eyes darted. She scanned the restaurant. Looked right past me. I didn't wait. I left. And I walked home. Alone. When I got there, her keys were already on the counter. She'd beaten me back. And she wasn't alone. There were 3 forks on the table, and only 2 people sitting there. That detail stuck with me, absurdly, like a clue in a detective story I hadn't meant to walk into. I didn't even know why I was in that restaurant. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't following her. It wasn't some pre-planned sting operation. It was pure accident, or maybe fate, if you're the kind of person who believes in that stuff. I'd been walking home from my dentist appointment, which ran late because the receptionist locked herself out of the system. And on my way back, I cut through the side street to avoid traffic. That's when I saw the glowing red canopy of Alto Mare, the kind of place you don't just stop by. The kind of place where you make reservations a week in advance and pretend to enjoy lamb tartare because it costs $38. Through the front window, I spotted her. Celia, my wife, married 6 years. Together 9. She was sitting with a man I didn't recognize. He had one of those smiles, not forced, not arrogant, but comfortable. Like he belonged there, like he'd been invited into something I thought was mine. He leaned forward casually, elbow on the white tablecloth, while Celia held her wine glass like it was part of her hand. They weren't just dining, they were relaxed. Familiar. Her eyes crinkled when she laughed at something he said. I stood outside for a while, too stunned to move, trying to make sense of the third fork. Because here's the thing. We'd eaten at that place exactly once, the night we got engaged. It had been her idea. Back then she said it was too fancy but worth it for the memory. That night, she wore a deep green dress and cried when I asked her. She said I knew her better than anyone ever had. But now, watching her laugh across from this stranger, I felt like I was watching a different version of her. One I wasn't invited to know. I didn't barge in. I didn't yell. I didn't do the cliché thing. No public confrontation, no broken glass. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened our messages. The last text she'd sent that morning read, "Client pitch ran long. Working late. Don't wait up tonight." I took a photo of the fork. Just the fork. And I sent it to her with no context, no words. From where I stood, I could see her phone light up on the table. She glanced at it mid-laugh. Then something shifted. Her expression tightened. Her fingers stopped moving. She stared at the screen for longer than she needed to. Then her eyes lifted and searched the room slowly, scanning behind her, across the windows, looking for the ghost who sent it. She didn't see me. I was already walking away. When I got home, I noticed the lights were already on. That was strange. She was still at the restaurant 10 minutes ago, but now her car was in the driveway and the front door was unlocked. I stepped inside quietly, shoes still damp from the rain. Her coat was hanging on the hook, her purse on the counter, everything in its place. And that's when I heard something upstairs. Not voices, just movement. Floorboards creaking, soft and deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. I hadn't said a word to her. I hadn't even knocked on the restaurant window. But somehow she was already home. And so was someone else. I didn't move right away. I stood in the hallway like someone who'd just broken into their own life. There was something unspoken in the air, something cold and wrong. The kitchen light was on, humming faintly. The house smelled like her shampoo, eucalyptus and something expensive. That scent used to comfort me. Now it just made my skin crawl. The sound upstairs came again. Not loud, not urgent. Just the creak of the floor near the bedroom. A deliberate step, then a pause. My stomach tightened like I'd swallowed concrete. It couldn't be her. She was still at the restaurant 20 minutes ago. I'd seen her there. I'd watched her sip wine and laugh like I didn't exist. So how could she be home now? And not just home, but already upstairs? I took one step forward. The wood under my foot betrayed me with a sharp crack, and the noise above stopped instantly. Silence, heavy and expectant, settled over the house like a blanket. I stood there frozen, barely breathing. Then, from upstairs, I heard the soft click of a door, not slamming, not opening, just closing gently. My first thought was, intruder. Maybe a break-in. Maybe I wasn't just losing my marriage. Maybe I was about to lose everything. I reached for the drawer where we kept the flashlight and, if I'm being honest, a dull old kitchen knife we used for camping. My hand was shaking so badly, I dropped the drawer halfway open and scattered pins and batteries all over the floor. And then I heard footsteps, fast, descending the stairs. I backed up, ready to bolt or swing or scream. But it was her. Celia. Alone. Or at least, she looked alone. She was barefoot, hair slightly damp, like she'd just stepped out of the shower. But she wasn't supposed to be here. She should have been finishing dessert with that guy, the one who made her laugh like she'd never met me. She stopped halfway down the stairs when she saw me, eyes wide, mouth opening slowly like a computer buffering a response. "You're home early," she said, voice flat. Not guilty, not surprised, just blank. I didn't answer. I was too busy scanning behind her, up the stairwell, toward our bedroom. Every instinct in me was screaming. Something wasn't right. Something didn't fit. "I thought you had that dentist thing," she added, stepping down 2 more stairs. Her tone was casual, as if we'd just bumped into each other in the kitchen, not like I'd caught her in an expensive restaurant with a man who definitely wasn't her client. I stared at her for what felt like a full minute, then finally spoke. "I saw you." Her face didn't twitch. No denial. No gasp. She just tilted her head slightly, like a curious dog. "Where?" she asked, like I was bringing up something from a dream. "Alto Mare," I said. "Corner table. You were with someone. Wearing that green sweater I bought you. The one you said didn't fit." There was a beat of silence. Then she smiled. Small, careful, controlled. "That's not possible," she said, as if correcting a confused child. "I've been home all afternoon." I blinked. My brain stuttered. That couldn't be true. I had photographic proof she was there. I'd sent her the picture. I saw her read it. I watched her look around. She knew I'd seen her. But now she was standing in front of me, calm as ever, claiming she'd never left the house. "I saw you," I repeated, voice cracking. "I saw your face. I saw you laughing. You were with him." She sighed, not in anger, but in something worse. Pity. Like I was a man unraveling in real time. "I think you're overtired," she said. "You've been anxious lately. You've been talking in your sleep." That's when it hit me. She was gaslighting me. But why? Why that hard? Why go this far? I stepped back and pulled out my phone, heart pounding. I opened the messages. Scrolled to the photo. The one I'd taken of the third fork. The wine glass. Her green sleeve. His hand. But the photo wasn't there. Not just the photo. The entire conversation thread with her was gone. I didn't delete that. I muttered, stunned. I swear I didn't. Celia stepped forward now, slowly, like I was made of glass. "You've been so stressed, Reed. Maybe talk to someone. I mean it, maybe it's time." And then, with horrifying calm, she reached into her purse and handed me one of those therapy referral cards. One I'd thrown out months ago. That's when I realized something. It wasn't just that she was lying. It was that she'd planned for this moment. Anticipated it. She didn't seem caught. She seemed prepared. And in that second, I stopped worrying about the man in the restaurant. Because something told me he wasn't the worst part of the secret she was keeping. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of a fight, There wasn't one. We didn't argue, didn't raise voices, didn't even finish the conversation. After she handed me that therapy referral card like it was a coupon for coffee, she just walked past me, went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, poured a glass of oat milk like it was a Tuesday in any normal marriage. The whole time, she didn't ask me a single question. Not, what do you think you saw? Or who do you think I was with? Not even a simple, are you okay? And that silence, her strategic silence, was worse than any shouting match could have been. She went to bed before me. I heard the bedroom door close softly, like she didn't want to wake something she knew was sleeping. I sat in the living room, in the dark, phone in hand, refreshing the same screen over and over. No photo, no chat history. I even checked my backup cloud. Nothing. The message thread with Celia was gone like it had never existed. But that didn't make sense. I hadn't deleted it. And if she had, how would she even have access to my phone remotely? Unless she knew something I didn't. Unless she'd done something long before I knew to start looking. At 2:03 a.m., I walked upstairs. Not because I was tired, but because I needed to check something. Our bedroom door was open. She was asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't look too long. I didn't say her name. I just went into the guest room, turned on the closet light, and stared at the coat rack. One of the jackets was new. I knew every item of clothing in that closet. That was the utility closet, mostly used for things we didn't wear often. Camping jackets, ski stuff, some of my dad's old coats I hadn't gotten rid of yet. But this one stood out. It was black, heavy, expensive looking. The tag was still on it, partially ripped. I reached into the pocket. Nothing in the left. But in the right, I felt something. Not a wallet. Not keys. A receipt. I pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. My hands were trembling, not from fear exactly, but from that sick mix of dread and adrenaline that only shows up when your life begins slipping out from under you. The receipt was from a liquor store 2 towns over, not somewhere we ever went. It was dated 5 days ago. The name on the credit card? Not Celia. Not me. R. Hallberg. I whispered it out loud like it might unlock something. The name meant nothing to me. But now I knew, definitively, this jacket didn't belong to either of us. She hadn't brought anyone home tonight. At least, I didn't see anyone. But someone had been here recently. Recently enough to leave their coat. Recently enough that she either hadn't noticed or didn't care I'd find it. Back in the living room, I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into our shared laptop, the one Celia used more than me. We hadn't used a shared computer much since we both got work laptops, but this one was still hooked up to the printer and the home network. We hadn't updated the password in years. It logged in. I opened the browser. Cleared history. Clean as a whistle. Then I checked bookmarks. Nothing out of place. She'd covered her tracks well. Too well. Except, there was one PDF in the downloads folder. It was just titled Form. I opened it. It was a rental application. For a 1-bedroom apartment. Small, nothing fancy. Downtown. Under a name I'd never heard. Not hers. Not mine. But the emergency contact listed at the bottom? My name. My number. I stared at the screen so long I forgot to blink. What kind of person fills out a fake rental form using a fake name and still lists their real husband as their emergency contact? That wasn't normal cheating. That wasn't, I made a mistake, cheating. That was something else. I heard her stir upstairs. The creak of the mattress. I closed the laptop and stepped away like I'd just touched something radioactive. And then something happened that sent chills straight down my spine. The doorbell rang. It was 2:44 in the morning. 3 soft chimes. Calm. Patient. Not a drunk neighbor. Not kids messing around. A doorbell like that meant the person on the other side knew what they were doing. I didn't move. I just stood there in the hallway, staring at the front door like it might open by itself. And from the top of the stairs, I heard her voice, low and tired, but not surprised. Don't answer that. She didn't ask who it was. She already knew. For a second, I thought I'd imagined her voice. That's strange, flat, don't answer that, from the top of the stairs. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe the stress was finally breaking something open inside me. But no. I turned, and there she was, standing halfway down the hallway, barefoot again, wrapped in a bathrobe like this was just another inconvenient Amazon delivery. No panic. No urgency. Just warning. I stared at her in disbelief. The doorbell had just rung at 2:44 in the morning, and she was treating it like a mosquito buzzing around the porch light. She looked down at me, eyes blank but alert. Not tired. Not confused. She knew exactly what was happening. I walked toward the door, slow, cautious. Part of me was terrified she might try to stop me. Not scream or attack me. That would be too loud, too obvious. No, Celia was more subtle than that. She was a chess player. I'd begun to realize that recently. Every word, every look, every movement was part of something I hadn't been invited to understand. I reached the peephole and leaned in, careful not to make a sound. There was a man standing there. Just one. Middle-aged, dark coat, short-cropped hair. His back was to the door. He wasn't fidgeting. He wasn't knocking. He was just standing completely still, arms folded in front of him like he was waiting for a job interview. His presence radiated calm, the kind of calm that made your bones itch. He knew he was being watched. I could feel it. Celia spoke again, this time a little louder, a little sharper. "Reed, do not open that door." I turned around slowly, and I saw something I never thought I'd see in my wife's face. Not guilt, not fear, not even control. It was fear of exposure. She didn't want me to know who he was. That was more dangerous to her than the man himself. "Who is he?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Tell me right now." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "Then why is he here?" No answer. Just that tightness in her jaw, like she was trying to hold something inside her mouth that didn't belong there. I stepped back to the door and flicked the deadbolt open. The sound of it, that metal click, echoed through the whole house. She gasped. Actually gasped. Like I'd just torn a hole in the world. I opened the door. But the man was gone. Just like that. The porch was empty. No footsteps, no car engine. Just the motion sensor light blinking softly over a damp welcome mat and the hum of crickets outside. I stepped out onto the porch. Looked both ways. No one. Nothing. I even walked out to the sidewalk and checked the street. No car parked nearby. No shadows moving. He had vanished. Or more terrifyingly, he had never meant to be seen. When I came back inside, Celia was no longer in the hallway. I heard the soft sound of drawers opening upstairs. Closets. Hangers. She was packing. I went up and found her zipping a suitcase, the dark blue one we only used for holidays. It was half full already. A couple of dresses, a box of toiletries, her passport. I didn't say anything. I just watched her try to slide her laptop into the side compartment like she was late for a flight. "Where are you going?" I finally asked. She didn't stop moving. "I need space." "You have space," I snapped. "You've been living in your own private world for months. Don't pretend this is about air. Tell me who that man was." Her hands froze. Her back was still turned, but I saw her shoulders tense. She stayed that way for a full 10 seconds before saying, "If I tell you the truth, you'll wish I hadn't." And then, without turning around, she added, "You'll think I'm insane. And if you believe me, it'll be worse." That should have stopped me, but it didn't. I was past the point of wanting peace. I wanted answers. I wanted names, dates, motives, receipts. I grabbed the suitcase and yanked it off the bed. Some of her clothes spilled out. I didn't care. "I'm done playing this game," I said. "I want to know who you are, Celia. Because the woman I married isn't this person. She doesn't lie. She doesn't vanish from restaurants. She doesn't erase messages from my phone or pretend she wasn't where I saw her." Celia turned slowly, and for the first time, she looked at me like I was the one keeping secrets. "There's a man," she said finally. "Yes, his name is Robert Hallberg, but he's not who you think." "Then tell me who he is." She paused. A long pause. One of those pauses where everything you've built in your life starts to teeter. And then she said, "He's not just someone I was seeing. He's the reason we're alive. And if he came to the door tonight, it means he's changed his mind." I didn't speak. Couldn't speak. She sat down on the edge of the bed and buried her face in her hands. "You really think this is about an affair?" She whispered. "Reed, what do you actually remember about the night we got engaged?" And just like that, something twisted inside my chest. Because I remembered the dinner, the wine, the little speech I'd written. But there were gaps. Strange gaps. Flashes. Missing hours I always thought I'd just misremembered. I looked at her, and for the first time since this began, I wondered if I wanted to know the truth at all. It's not a good feeling when someone asks you about a moment that should be unforgettable, and your mind responds with static. When Celia asked me what I remembered about our engagement night, I felt something shift, like my brain had just dropped a drawer full of files and couldn't quite put them back in order. I remembered the dinner at Alto Mare, or at least flashes of it. I remembered the candles, the champagne, the little blue box I had nervously stuffed into my coat pocket. I remembered kneeling beside the table and people clapping. I even remembered her crying. But when I tried to rewind the night in full, like actually play the tape in my head from start to finish, something was off. There were hours missing. And that terrified me more than anything she'd said so far. I don't understand, I told her. We got engaged. We had dinner. We went home. What does any of that have to do with tonight? With Robert? With that man at the door? Celia looked down at her hands. Her nails were painted dark green, the same shade as the sweater she wore at Alto Mare the night I saw her with the stranger. I hadn't even noticed the connection until now. I wondered if that had been deliberate. A symbol. A breadcrumb. Or maybe it meant nothing, and I was just spiraling. You proposed, she said, her voice quiet. You were shaking, Reed. I thought you were just nervous, but looking back, you were pale. You couldn't finish your meal. You excused yourself halfway through dessert and said you felt off. Then we went home, and you passed out on the couch fully dressed. I covered you with a blanket and didn't wake you up. I nodded. So what? I was exhausted. That was a long day. She shook her head slowly. No, Reed. You weren't tired. You were drugged. Her words didn't hit me immediately. My mind rejected them like a bad transplant. But the more I tried to argue, the more that night began to unravel in my memory. The champagne had tasted bitter. My hands had been shaking. I'd thought it was just adrenaline, proposal jitters. But now I realized something else. I had no memory of the Uber ride home. None. Not a second. I remembered being at the restaurant, and then I remembered waking up to birds chirping the next morning. Nothing in between. I stared at her. Who drugged me? She didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, she stood up and walked to the closet, pulled down a small black lockbox from the top shelf, the kind people use to keep passports and insurance papers. She entered the code without hesitation. When she opened it, there were no documents. No jewelry. Just one thing. A burner phone. She handed it to me. It was already on. No password. There was only one contact saved in the Messages app. R. I scrolled through the thread. The messages were cryptic. Short. All lowercase. Most of them made no sense. R. Confirmed. Celia, how long do we have? R. Depends. He's quieter than expected. Celia, will it fade? R. It already is. Be patient. Celia, what if he starts asking again? R. Stall him. I looked up at her, my throat tightening. Are these about me? She nodded. You've been lying to me for years. No, she said. I've been protecting you. From a truth you begged me to erase. I didn't know what to say to that. It sounded insane. It was insane. But the way she said it, calm, firm, resolved, she wasn't trying to convince me. She was reminding me of something I wasn't supposed to forget. She sat back down on the bed and folded her hands like someone preparing to give testimony. Her voice was almost too steady. You saw something, Reed. Something you weren't supposed to see. And you made me promise to help you forget. You said you didn't want it ruining our lives. You wanted peace. So I agreed. And Robert facilitated it. I laughed. A short, bitter, breathless laugh. You expect me to believe I erased my own memory of something and hired some mystery man to help. She didn't blink. Yes. Because you knew if you didn't forget, they'd come for you. You said you didn't want to live looking over your shoulder. You wanted a clean slate. I stood up. Pacing now. My body wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. And now? I asked. Why is he back? What changed? She didn't answer right away. Her hands were shaking now. The first crack in her mask. I think he's trying to remind you, she said. Or maybe someone else is. I looked back down at the phone. There was a new message. Just one word. Soon. I didn't even hear myself drop the phone. My vision tunneled. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears like distant thunder. Celia stood up and touched my arm. I didn't want this. I thought we were in the clear. And then, just before the lights in the house flickered once, barely noticeable, but just enough to make the hallway buzz, she whispered, Reed, you need to remember what happened at Alto Mare. The real reason we were there. Because whatever we erased, it's coming back. And in that moment, I understood something awful. This story hadn't started with the woman at the café. It started long before that. I just hadn't been conscious for it. There's a type of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels loaded. Like the air around you is bracing for whatever comes next. That's what filled the room after she said those words. The real reason we were at Alto Mare. I sat back down, slowly, as if moving too fast might set something off. I stared at her. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Not physically, but existentially. Like someone who's been rehearsing the truth for years and finally ran out of excuses not to say it. There was no panic in her eyes anymore, just resignation, and maybe a little fear that once I knew everything, I wouldn't look at her the same again. And I wouldn't. I already knew that. She sat across from me, knees drawn up under her robe, hair loose now, the night pulling us into some version of ourselves that had nothing left to protect. She spoke softly, like the walls were listening. You remember that you proposed to me that night. That's not a lie. You had the ring. You were nervous. It was real. But that wasn't the reason we picked Altomare. That wasn't even the night you'd planned to propose. That whole evening was my idea. I insisted on the place. I insisted on the timing. Because I knew Robert would be there. I blinked. What do you mean would be there? You invited him? No. I knew he'd be watching. He always watches when a reset happens. A reset? I asked, the word dry and alien on my tongue. What is this, some cult language? She didn't laugh. Just continued. You came to me 3 days before that dinner. You were pale, paranoid. You said someone had followed you after work. You said you saw something at your office you weren't supposed to. A meeting, a name, I don't know what exactly. You never told me, but you were shaking. I thought you were having a breakdown. You said if you didn't get help, they'd come for you. And not just you, me too. You kept saying they don't let people walk away. They clean it up. Over and over again. I didn't remember any of this. Not a single second. I would have thought she was making it up. All of it. If not for the way her voice cracked on the word help. If not for the fact that a man had appeared at our door in the middle of the night and vanished without a sound. If not for the burner phone I now held in my lap like it might start burning through my jeans. I tried to calm you down, she continued. I told you to go to the police. But you laughed at me. You said the police were worse. You said the only person who could get you out was someone named Hallberg. You used a connection. You made a call. And then you asked me one thing. She looked me directly in the eyes, and it felt like a punch to the chest. You asked me to come with you. You said if you had to forget everything, I was the only part you wanted to keep. My stomach twisted. There was a dull ringing in my ears, like I was on the edge of passing out. I stood up and walked to the window, needing air. The street was still empty. No sign of the man. Just a raccoon digging around the recycling bins. I turned back to her. So what was Altomare? A cover? It was the handoff, she said. You proposed halfway through dinner. Then you started to feel sick. You don't remember the second half of the night because they started the reset right after dessert. They took you to a clinic 2 floors above the restaurant. You were only gone for 20 minutes. You thought you went to the bathroom. I was shaking now. That's impossible. You can't just wipe someone's memory like that. That's not real. That's sci-fi. She walked over, slowly, and handed me a folder I hadn't seen her holding. It had been tucked in the suitcase. Inside were 6 pages, all medical. None official. All stamped with a logo I didn't recognize, a triangle with a single dot in the center. The date on the form? 1 day before our engagement dinner. My name was at the top. Under procedure. MN 7/external trauma-triggered memory clearance, Tier 2. Below it, in Celia's handwriting, was a note. Patient requested selective suppression of traumatic visual exposure. Partner consents to relational continuity. Observational monitoring approved. My breath caught in my throat. What did I see, Celia? Her face hardened. I don't know, and I don't want to. You begged me not to ask. You said it wasn't just dangerous, it was a curse. You said knowing would make me a target. I turned and looked at the mirror across the room. For the first time in days, I really looked at myself. And I saw it. In the eyes, in the posture. I wasn't just unraveling. I was slowly remembering a version of myself I had buried like a landmine. And then the doorbell rang again. One single chime. Louder this time. Sharp. Final. Celia looked at me. That's not Robert. I reached for the burner phone. A new message. It's time. I didn't answer the door. Not that night. Not when the chime echoed through the house again, deeper than it had any right to sound. Not when the air changed. That still pressure you feel before a storm hits. Not even when Celia stepped back and whispered, "Read. Whatever you do, don't open it until you know." Instead, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I sat down. Right there on the stairs, halfway between the door and the second floor, between the life I knew and the one I was beginning to remember. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and let the weight of it all crash down. Not in fear this time, but with purpose. I had spent weeks trying to chase the truth like it was a moving target. But in that moment, I stopped running. And the memories started to come back. Not like a flood, more like fragments clicking into place. A hallway with white tile. A voice behind me saying my name 3 times. A screen showing a blurred image of a man. His face pixelated, but I knew him. And then I saw myself holding something. A photo. No, a file. Thick, sealed with a red wax stamp. I couldn't make out what was inside, only that I wasn't supposed to see it. I'd seen something that day, and I'd chosen to forget not because I was weak, but because I wanted a life beyond paranoia. Because for the first time in my life, I'd fallen in love, really, genuinely, and I wasn't willing to lose it to a secret that didn't belong to me. That's what Celia had been protecting. Not just my mind, but our life. I opened my eyes. The door was silent again. No shadow beneath it. No hum. Whoever had been there, if anyone had been, was gone now. When I turned to her, Celia looked smaller. She always carried this subtle strength, even when she was exhausted or angry, but now that strength had shifted. She didn't look like someone managing a lie anymore. She looked like someone who had carried a burden far too long and was finally letting it go. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "For everything I didn't say, for what I had to do. You trusted me, and I made choices you didn't get to vote on." I stood up, walked over, and took her hand. "You did it to protect us. I get that now. I didn't then, but I do now." And I meant it, not out of blind faith, not because it made the pain vanish, but because sometimes forgiveness isn't about erasing what hurt you. It's about choosing what still matters in spite of it. We sat together on the couch until morning. No more secrets. No more games. Just silence. And then eventually, laughter, small at first, hesitant, but real. It was the first time in weeks we sounded like us again. That week, we threw out the burner phone, burned the medical folder in the backyard, and we drove out to the coast. No phones, no maps, just open highway. It wasn't an escape. It was a restart. One we chose together. And you know what? She laughed again. Not like she'd never met me, but like she finally remembered who I was. And I did too.